How's everyone this evening? Hope you're all doing well. Alright. Hey, Mountain Mama. Hey, Maki. How are you doing tonight? Good to see ya. Wonderful. So, good to see you. Yeah, so this was one of the teapots I finished last week. So, I had put the handle on right at the end of the night. Hey, Lisa. How are you? I'm gonna put a little more light on the wheel. Music's a bit loud. Alright. Gotcha. How's the sound? Can still adjust it if I need to. Alright, awesome. Yeah, so this is the teapot that I finished the last time on stream. It's it's pretty much done. It just needs a little bit of cleanup, but I'm not going to be working on this one tonight. I just figured I'd show it off to start with. Thanks, Sam. Yeah, it came out nice. Thanks, Maki. Yeah, so tonight we have our Throwdown Week 3 challenge, which is throwing a closed sphere. So we're going to make basically a bubble on the wheel. And the idea is that you throw a round sphere and then you can trim the bottom, and so you end up with this spherical ball. KT! Yes, bubble! KT says Viking pottery is the best pottery. Alright, so I'm gonna set this aside for now. And we'll get started on throwing this sphere. Alright, so this is 3 pounds of clay. Again, if the music's still too loud, or if it's alright, or if the mic that I'm using is a little loud, let me know. I can always adjust it. Hey, Trigger and Smooch! How are you doing this evening? So I'm going to do a couple of these. Oh, thanks, KT. Appreciate it. I'm going to do a couple of these just to first practice one and then see how it goes, and then try it twice. I always like to try things a couple times, so. Just getting this clay centered up. I'm going to start with kind of a, I think a narrower bottom so that I can get a little bit more round. KT, thanks for posting that link. I'm going to open this from here. So right now I'm just kind of shaping up the interior. I want it to be kind of like a bowl shape so that it's round on the inside, so that when I trim it, it creates that spherical shape and I don't have to worry about it being too thin in any places and trimming through the bottom. Trigger says, what are you making tonight? So right now I'm actually working on the Throwdown Challenge Week 3. So the Pottery Throwdown Challenge for this week is to throw a round sphere. So it's going to be enclosed and completely, so the top's going to come all the way back in, so there won't be an opening. And then I'm going to, at some point, probably tomorrow if it's dry enough, but I'll actually trim it into a completely round sphere. So it's kind of like this, I'm taking this 3-pound ball of clay, throwing it into a cylinder, and then shaping it into a sphere. So right now I'm just thinning out the sides. I have done something similar. I've not tried to make a completely round sphere, but I have thrown enclosed pots where there's actually a style of jar where you can close in the top and then you take and you make a depression in the side, and where the depression is in the side you kind of cut it, and then that kind of, it drops back into the piece below it to make it a container. So I've thrown closed forms and shapes, and it's very close to a bottle. So where my bottles have really thin necks, it would be the same as that, except without leaving the opening, you just close it up. Thanks, Squidward. Trying to move all this clay from the base up into the cylinder. Hi, Safi. So Safi asks what the Throwdown is. It's kind of a friendly competition here on Twitch. So there's 20 different potters who are participating in the Throwdown, and we are all participating in the weekly challenges. So it's kind of based off of the Great Pottery Throwdown, which is a show on. It's currently being syndicated on HBO Max, but it's a BBC show. It airs on BBC4, and what they do is it's like it's in the format of the Great British Bake Off. If you've ever seen that, it's made by the same production company. And so every episode they have a main make where the potters are working towards making some sort of object or piece of pottery. So like, so for this challenge, we're making teapots, a teapot and 4 teacups to go along with it. So say that's the main make for the episode. They start the teapots, and then halfway through the episode, they do a challenge. Hey, thanks for the follow, Squidward. And the challenge is typically some sort of flash challenge. So this was one of the flash challenges from the show. This is throwing a sphere, an enclosed sphere. So the idea is they have a flash challenge, and then if you do poorly in that and you do poorly in the main make, you get kicked off the show. And then it goes all the way to the end where they have 3 potters, and then they choose one who's the best potter for the season. A typical competition show. And for this, we're not really eliminating anyone. We're just kind of doing it for fun and promoting everyone who's never kicked me off. Thank you. And so we're doing the main make, and then every week we have one of the flash challenges. And the flash challenge this week is to throw an enclosed sphere. The first week we did miniatures, and the second week we did a blindfolded cylinder. So last week I threw blindfolded, which was very interesting. But all in all, good fun. It's a good spirited event. And thanks for coming out this evening and watching me. Guess you really didn't have to go anywhere, right? That's kind of the nice part. Thanks, Trigger. I appreciate it. Yeah, the miniatures were a lot of fun to make. So now I'm just working on closing this. A little bit. There's nowhere to go, so this is perfect. I miss you too, thanks. Going to give this a little bit more shape before I finish closing it up. I'll be able to shape it once I completely close in the top as well, a little bit more. But it won't be as easy to expand, so I want to get some of that expansion in now. So once it's closed in, you actually trap an air pocket, and that gives you enough back pressure that you can continue shaping the piece like you have your hand on the inside, giving it the back pressure you need for compression. So again, just continuing to move this over. If you would like any more details on the throwdown, if you type !throwdown details in chat, it'll give you a couple of links to the website for the event and a Discord for the event. Now that it's closed up, I'm just trying to get it really work together right at that connection point, creating a little bit more pressure. Imagining what if the winner had to do a last challenge made of all the others. Like blindfolded miniature closed sphere. Maki, that'd be pretty crazy, yeah. I couldn't imagine throwing a miniature blindfolded. It takes so much concentration just to not mess it up, so. So, Trigger thinks that would be amazing too if you mixed it all together. What would I do with a closed sphere for decorative purposes? Yeah, so it would basically be a decorative pot. I've seen pieces like this that are low fired, which is actually right up my alley as far as the work that I typically make. So, so I would typically work on making it some sort of decorative piece. And Safi, no, I didn't make the music. This is just a stream, no copyright, lo-fi channel that I'm streaming in the background. Kat says, "How about assembling a teapot blindfolded?" That could be a mess as well. I don't know how well I would do with that one. I think I could fumble through it, but geez, I don't know if it would look good, that's for sure. It would be a work of art, that's true. On the Great Pottery Throwdown, a deconstructed teapot, Maggie says. Oh, I'm good, Kat. How are you doing this evening? So on the Great Pottery Throwdown, they actually had this gentleman come on and do one of the flash challenges, and he makes these 1-minute teapots. Apparently he is a pretty well-known comedian in England. I forget his name at the moment, so I'm not going to make anything up because I don't remember it, but it's one of the episodes from season 3. And so they did these 1-minute teapots on the wheel where they were throwing all the pieces and just shoving them together, and boy, they were rough. You're working too? Nice. Yeah, so he actually has his 1-minute teapots in museums and such, and I mean they're a mess, but I could probably throw one of those together and blindfolded and it would look about the same. So I'm trying to add some compression to the side in order for it to look a little bit more like a sphere instead of it was more of a UFO shape there for a second. Ovoid. It still kind of is, so I just want to push it up. See if I can get a little more lift. Where I took it in at the top, it kind of got a little flat, so I also want to create a bit more of an angle there as well. I say UFO like it's a bad thing. No, it's not a bad thing. It's just I really wanted to make a as round of a piece as I could. So I actually really like the UFO shape. Because it gives you a nice area for surface decoration, but the the form I'm going for was definitely more round. Nothing against UFOs. We're getting there. This is more along the lines of what I was thinking originally. So you can kind of see in the camera here, it's definitely getting that round shape to it. Mountain Mama says, "Have you made a sphere before?" I've made lots of pieces that were pretty round. Like most of my bottles are spherical in some sense. Now, I'll change it a bit, like a little more narrow towards the foot, or more amphora shaped, but it's not really like this. I've never made this specifically before, where it's just a completely enclosed solid piece that I've tried to get in perfectly round. I've made some spherical pieces that were intended to be jars, where you kind of cut them or put a groove in it to make it have a lid. Or I've actually done something like this and cut it out, where I've thrown the sphere and then cut a hole to put a teapot lid in, so to turn it into a jar. And typically that happens when I'm throwing a bottle and I ruin the tiny neck, and it ends up being a little too little clay to pull a new neck out of, or just something wrong with it where I can't really get the bottle shape that I would want at that point. And I don't typically throw bottles where I'm going to add the neck to it. Like, I don't want to add a secondary piece. I've done it before and I just don't like the way it looks. So typically what I do is, if I ruin the bottleneck itself, I'll turn it into a lidded vessel or something of that nature. Something a little different than what it was typically intended for. Maki says, "This is looking really good. Thank you so much." Maki says, "Can I see my future in it?" No, it's not quite that shiny yet. You can polish the clay until it's super shiny and you can see yourself in it. Currently, cannot see the future in this piece. I'm gonna let this one sit for a little while after this and see if I can get another one made. It's getting a thin spot in it somehow. I don't have enough Reverend Chaos music to play in the background for 3 hours, I don't think. So anyway, this is the sphere for right now. I'm gonna try to throw another one. Yeah, KT is my unofficial head of PR for sure. Alright, let's try this again. Yes, that is what KT is really good at for sure. Yeah, I use plastic bats. I've been using them since I started throwing and just ended up collecting a bunch of them over the years. I bought a lot from a potter who was retiring. So I just have a ton of them and they work pretty well for me. Type in exclamation mark and then throw down details, all one word. No, I don't have any problem centering on the plastic bats, cat. I'm pretty good with the with centering on them. I've never really had an issue. There you go. There's the throwdown details in chat. If you want to go to the website or check out the Discord, all that information is right there. I think, Kat, I think pretty much with the plastic bats, your bat pins have to be perfectly locked into your wheel, very, very tight, and then the centering process has to be done with all movement directly in towards the center. If you push too hard to one side, the bat starts to shift a little bit because one hole is over drilled slightly, and then you will get a little bit of off-centeredness. So you have to change the way you center in order to get it centered perfectly. And Maki says, are there pictures of everybody's challenge pieces on the Discord? Yes, there are pictures. So in the Discord, there are some channels called Week 1, Week 2, Week 3, and everyone is posting the pictures of their finished pieces in those channels. There's also a YouTube video that just got published today. I think it was on Facebook and some other places. It's probably on the Discord somewhere by now. So I'll share that on my social media a little later tonight. I haven't had a chance to get it since they released it. But it was a compilation video put together by Bump the Koala, and it was of the blindfolded challenge from this last week. So it was a really funny video. They did a really good job on it. Oh, you're welcome, Maki. I'm going to throw this one a little thicker. And I'm not going to bring it out quite as much on the side this time. I think it'll help me get it more round. Mountain Mama has confirmed mesmerizing. Gonna give it a little shape in here and then bring it in. I'm gonna leave it a little thicker, like I said, all the way through. Hopefully that gives me the ability to shape it a bit easier. Try to bring this together. Working through this connection point a little bit just to kind of get it a little more even and work together. There we go. Now I'm going to try to shape that spherical shape into it. I met an artist once. Well, I've met him a bunch of times, but the first time I met him was at Salisbury University here in Maryland, and his name is Ramon Camarillo, and he makes these incredible shapes. He'll take a whole block of clay and he throws it incredibly thin, so thin. Thanks, KT. Love you, brother. Have a good night. And and he would throw the pieces to get them extremely thin and lightweight, he would throw them completely hollow, so all the way open down to the... Oh, Ramon's amazing, yeah. He would throw all the way down to the wheel so that the pot was open in the base, and then he would throw the clay all the way up and close it in at the top. And then, yeah, the blowtorch is his friend for sure. And then, so he would close this in. This would end up being the bottom of the pot. So this would be the foot right here at the top. And then he would take the piece after he blowtorched it, and he had a 5-gallon bucket, and he would center the piece in the 5-gallon bucket. The bucket had a piece of foam in it. It was like a insulation foam. It goes around pipes. So when you set the pot in, it didn't cut into the piece. And then he would throw the neck on the bottle. And you could do this either way. He could throw the top with the bottleneck and drop that into the bucket. The bucket's tall enough so it can hold either the bottom or the neck. And then he would throw both sides of the pot, and so there was no extra clay in it anywhere. It was always thrown exactly the thinness that he wanted it all the way through. But it ended up turning these gigantic pieces out of... You feel them, they're so lightweight. It's almost like you're holding a bubble. It's amazing. But yeah, you could turn a 20-pound, 25-pound piece into a pot that felt like air. It didn't ever feel like a 25-pound piece. And then he did the most beautiful raku firings and pit firings and different low fire techniques. He lived out in Hawaii for a while, but he's currently back in the Virginia area. Now you can catch him playing ukulele fairly regularly on Facebook. Alright, so there's another sphere. Trim that up later, but it's a fun experiment. Clay's Food says, I have a hilarious video of him doing a demo in a bar in OC. I was wobbling madly and he was trying to save it. Yeah. The pieces start to get, when they get that thin, I can imagine they get real crazy on him real fast. But you, just like any potter, you get to the point where you feel like you should be able to save it. So you always try. I found myself for a very long time when I was doing demonstrations for people being very conservative with the way that I was throwing to make sure that I didn't fail. And now I don't really worry about that as much. I just I throw however I throw, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's kind of part of the process, and I think it's important for people to see that even after you've been doing it for, however many years you have, that you can still make mistakes. It's a forgiving medium, but it's not a set in stone until it's actually out of the kiln. The Clay Guild of the Eastern Shore is a local group here in my area, and they did a workshop with Ramon in Ocean City where they took and did a giant pit firing in the sand on the beach. They called it Clay Fire and Sand. It was a really cool workshop. And the second time they did that was actually when I first met Ramon. They did most of the workshop at the college where I was working at the time. I've subsequently seen Ramon. That's where you were? Nice. Yeah. I've subsequently seen Ramon at the biennial conference. Oh, geez, Kat, that had to have been just about a decade ago. Maybe 9 years, but it's been quite a while. Maybe 9 or 10 years at the least. But yeah, that was a long time. Yeah, so the Mid-Atlantic Clay Conference is a show. It's a biennial show, so it happens every 2 years in Virginia, and I've seen him there a couple times. And he did a workshop at Mike's place, the clay doctor. So I saw him there do another demonstration. Yeah, you could have been at the first one. I don't know how long ago the first one was, but the second one has been a while. I wasn't part of the guild when the first one happened. So I have a couple teapots here waiting for parts. So I threw a lot of these pieces. Yeah, wow. Yeah, so the first one was quite a while ago. It was before I actually ever started doing pottery. So and I've been doing it for about 12 years, so it's been quite a while. Hi Nima, hope you're well. 1314, that sounds like it was about right. I have all of so I'm currently the president of the Clay Guild of the Eastern Shore, and I have all of the documents that we have saved throughout the years. And yeah, I think that sounds about right for when that first one happened. Here we go. So right now I'm just cutting through. Hey Vickles, good to see you. Welcome back. So here I am working on getting a spout for another teapot. So we're gonna just work on this until I get the right shape. It's not quite where I want it. That's a little steep of an angle still. Elizabeth, good evening. Hope you're all well. Good to see you. All right, so I'm just working on this until I get it where I want it. Ultimately, I want the spout to line up with the top of the pot. So I want the bottom of this spout to line up right with the top so that as it fills up, it won't spill out. And finding the right angle, so like this has a nice angle, right? So I just have to figure out how to cut this to get it to fit on this pot. So I actually made this one for this piece over here, and then I'm trying to work this one into something similar. trying to get it shaped up. Want to get it so that it's starting to kind of fit, so it's got to have a little bit of a curve kind of in the center. So it's got to come down a little bit lower and then kind of meet back up at the top. So the top needs to be, I really want it to kind of come out like this. So I've got to lean this bottom part back. Is it hard to do this with people watching? Mountain Mama asks. Well, what you have to remember is that I've been working in front of people and teaching people and doing demonstrations for a very, very long time. And I've thrown in person in front of hundreds of people at once. And it doesn't really bother me because it's what I like to do. And I think when you're passionate about something, it kind of makes it easier to do even when people are watching. And this is actually kind of, it's nice, like I know people are watching, but I'm also just sitting here by myself. So it's not really awkward. It's just like I would just be down here doing this anyway, and now I just have people to talk to. And Trigger says she was wondering if interacting makes it harder. So interacting makes it a little bit more, like kind of takes your attention away every once in a while. No, but I'm not so distracted that I can't make the pieces or do the work. It's not really a big deal. It makes it just as hard as teaching someone who is asking questions, and Vickles says normally you just talk to yourself. Yeah. So normally I'm just down here working in my studio and I just have to talk to the walls. So when I'm actually I've been doing production pottery for a very long time, and when I do a lot of production where I'm making hundreds of pieces, the thing that I do is pretty much just I'll set my phone or laptop up with a show on or something. I don't really pay attention to working with I don't pay attention to working with the cylinders as much as I do just kind of pay attention to something else going on. And so now I've just made it so that I can sit here and do my work and interact with people instead of just watching the new season of whatever. So I think it's healthier actually. So yeah, I get the intermittent giggles when someone posts something funny while I'm still trying to answer another question. And then that's the fun part. That's actually what's the fun part of all this, is the interacting is what makes it fun. So I'd much rather sit here and laugh over this than sit here and watch a show. So this is also something I wanted to do for quite a while. So I've wanted to start streaming, and it's just been slowly working up to it, and then here we are. So it worked out. Alright, so I just want to trim this spout back again. But it's starting to get the shape that I want. It sticks off at the right direction, and what I want to make sure, like I said earlier, is that the bottom of the spout, I don't know if you can see, but you see the knife tool coming across the end of the spout lines up just about exactly with the bottom of the spout here with the lid. So that's the goal there. So Trigger asks, is this going to be more about the artistic view, functionality, or both? So whenever I approach the making something functional, then I really focus on getting it to function properly. And then throughout the process, I've been working on also getting it to my personal aesthetic. So the forms are the forms that I like, these very bulbous round forms. The spouts are the spouts that I like. I like these very short spouts. You know, some people make spouts that come up from the bottom of the pot. Some people make different, there's lots of different things that you can do. So it's always a little bit about, it's always about the function of the piece, and then the aesthetic is all the way through. So I've been thinking about the aesthetic the entire time, and then I'm focusing on the finish as I go. And then Kat says, I love the connectivity and community, but I'm rubbish at being in front of an audience. Oh, we'll have a wonderful dinner, Kat. Good to see you. Thanks so much for stopping by. All right, so another thing that I want to do right now is just kind of draw out where this spout is connecting so that I can make a proper connection between these two pieces here. So now I have the mark. And what I'm going to do is cut out the space between where it's going to be connected. So if you can see here, I've got, you can kind of see this O drawn out. So the center portion is actually going to get cut out completely. And then the area that's left, the other O, is where the connection point between the spout and the teapot are going to be, so that they join together. So we'll just remove that. And then I get to clean that up. I think one thing that happens when you are interacting is that you can get a little sidetracked, and so I do everything through a very step-by-step kind of process-based methods. And so every once in a while I'll kind of skip a little thing here or there, and then I have to go back and kind of tidy things up a little bit, because I'll have overlooked it or not thought about it until a little bit later. But for the most part, it's not really a big deal. I actually really like working in front of people, and most of the time I would prefer to do demonstrations and kind of talk about my process as compared to actually getting someone else to be able to do it. So now I'm not saying I don't like teaching, I'm just saying it's easier for me to do demonstrations and I enjoy it. But teaching is definitely harder, I think, than doing demonstrations. And so this is just like lots of demo, essentially, so it kind of takes the easy part of the job. If this were a Zoom class, it would be a lot more difficult. So I'm just cleaning up this area that I cut out so there's no sharp edges. All right. everybody putting clay on the keyboard for the Zoom class. Yeah. Yeah, so I've done some Zoom classes, and although it can be done, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. I try very hard to not get clay and all over the mouse and keyboard here while I'm streaming. Alright, so for joining, I like to use a slip. So a slip is a liquid clay, and so it's like you can see here. So for the so Trigger asks if I'll be glazing these pieces for the pottery throwdown. Yes, the main make, the teapot set, teapot and cups, those need to be completely finished before the end of the 6 weeks. So I actually want to finish these up this week, and so that they can start drying, and then I'll work on glazing them and have them done by week 6. So I really need to finish these this week. I've taken quite a lot of time finishing, but I'm trying to do it all on stream, so it's kind of making the process take a little bit longer, since I'm kind of moving everything from session to session. This is actually that wasn't the right slip, that was a different clay body. So I've got here we go, a massive jar of slip. And I need a big old paintbrush. There we go. So before I apply the slip, I'm going to make some score marks. So it's like tiny little cuts in the clay, and these cuts help get some slip inside of them. And I do the same thing to the spout here. Macchiadelli says, is there a special component in that makes it more like glue, or really just wet clay? It is literally just it is this exact clay. That's why I didn't use the last one that I picked up, actually, because this slip that I'm about to use right here is the exact same clay body that this is. So it's going to be like adding a little bit of the same exact clay back to this piece. So the idea is that you are using the slip, which is just clay and water, to create a layer between it to help join it together, kind of like mortar between bricks. And it just helps bond the two pieces together, so it gets in the little cuts on each side and fills in those spaces. You can, if your clay is a little wetter, you can just use water and kind of build up the surface a little bit with just the slip that you kind of work into the surface. But this has been sitting for a little while, so I want to use the slip to make sure that it really joins well. And the tricky part about scoring is that you don't want to let any air pockets exist. So you really need to work that slip into those little cuts that you put in it, or else the air pocket can make it pop off or crack between the two pieces that you're joining together. So now, before I really push this on, I just want to check the alignment. Mountain Mama says, I guess for a spout you want it to be really secure. That's correct, yeah. So the idea is that it really wouldn't matter what piece I'm attaching. If I'm making an attachment, I want it to be secure. I don't ever want to make an attachment that isn't going to stay firm. Whenever you add an appendage, be it a handle, a spout, anything that you're going to stick onto these pieces, you want to make sure that they're put on there really well. So it doesn't matter what it would be. I would take the same amount of time and energy and put it in to making these connections. But the spout really needs to not have any space in between. You don't want to have it leak out, between the two pieces or anywhere. So really, if there was a space where it leaked or it had a crack in it, I would just never sell it, and I would probably scrap it. It would just be defective at that point. So that's why I always make sure that everything is sealed as tightly as it could possibly be and really put together well. So I'm just gonna I'm using my dowel rod here to press in around the spout to try to roll and create some compression between these two pieces of clay now, so that they start to join and become one. It's also why I make all my components out of the same clay body. So like I didn't throw the spout that I'm using for this teapot out of a different clay body, so a different type of clay where it can have a different firing temperature or a different shrink rate or a different coefficient of expansion, and it's gonna join perfectly. It's like you're sticking two pieces of clay together, and as long as you're sticking two pieces of clay together that are exactly the same, it's always going to bond properly. So that's why the slip that I'm using is the same clay body. The appendages or pieces that I'm using are all the same clay body. See, at this point I could also get a bit of fresh clay if I wanted to, and kind of work around this piece, and I can just make the tiniest little coil of clay here, and then I could go in and reinforce this connection all the way around. And as you do that, you would just blend it just like I did before. Just kind of push and blend that clay back and forth until it looks like it's seamless. But that kind of reinforces that connection with a little bit of fresh plastic clay. So this is just where I've added a bit more clay between these two areas, and it only looks slightly different than this side here, but I can go all the way around and add that extra layer just to make everything really secure. just about cleaning it up to make it smooth and seamless. Almost like the piece was always a part of it. That's kind of the goal that I have with making attachments, is that I always want it to look like it was always there. Like it was just, it's not an afterthought. It's just part of the piece. You almost don't even consider the fact that it was secondary or applied later. It's just emerging from the form. Go. So now it's just about continuing to, thank you, Mountain Mama, appreciate it. I want to continue to shape. I want to continue shaping this spout and get a nice pouring lip on it. So pouring lip should just turn over the edge, and it should stop, and then when the water hits it, it should flow off. If it has a little ridge or a bump, or if it's too fat, like rounded, then the water will hit the edge and then roll underneath and roll down the edge of the teapot and pour off the bottom. So the idea is that you get a pouring edge that doesn't drip. So you're almost creating the ledge of a waterfall. That's the way I like to think about it. So it's kind of just coaxing the clay over, just massaging it to the edge. Just want to make sure that my connection's in between. So I'm just taking this tool, the dowel rod, down inside the spout, and I'm trying to check the connections between these pieces on the interior. So I'm just going back and forth around where that cut out that opening, and just kind of moving that clay in those spaces so there's no sharp spots where it joined together, or where some slip could have poured out to the side and created a little lip or a boundary for the water to not flow into the spout easily. clean it up. It's pretty smooth. It's just these little details that really add up to a really nice piece in the end. Just trying to make sure that everything is attended to and you paid attention to all the little aspects of it. There we go. So this piece just needs a handle. Does anyone have a preference for handles? Does anyone use teapots? Do you have the preference for the handle that goes over the top or the preference for the handle that goes on the back? Elizabeth says, doesn't the top one make it harder to fill? Yeah, so the teapot handle that goes over top can make it a little bit harder to fill. Not a tea drinker, just thinking logistically. Yeah, so I'll show you the one that I have finished here. And really what you're trying to do when you have a teapot lid that goes over the handle, the technical aspects of how this handle works are, I need to make sure that, number one, there's enough space for my hand to fit in between the handle and the lid. I actually want my hand to be very close to the lid so that I can hold it in place while I'm tipping it over. So that means my hand is also touching the lid so that the lid doesn't fall forward like this. With the handle being there, if the lid did fall forward, it actually catches on the lid, hopefully keeping it from falling out also. And when it comes to filling, so the lid needs to be low, like so that it can come out. And then when it comes to filling, you're just shooting for the side. So you can see you're just pouring into this space between the handle and the opening of the teapot. The nice thing about a handle that's over the top is that it puts your hand right over the center of gravity. So when you're holding the teapot, it doesn't feel as heavy as it actually is because you're not holding it back here where it would be forward heavy. So your hand is really far away from the center of gravity when it's back here on this side of the teapot. Here, it's just balanced. And then when you go to pour, it's a very easy movement. The thing about a handle on this side though is it makes pouring very easy. You instantly want to start pouring this piece. But here, you have to tip a little bit further. So you actually you can hold it back here a little bit more to get a better tipping action. But a handle back here typically always requires a hand on the front and a hand back here so that you're pouring like so. So there are technical aspects to whether or not you would want a forward handle over the top or a handle on the back side. All in all, it really just kind of is personal preference. But a lot of the time, what I like to think about is the function of the piece. So I think about how wide the piece is and whether or not I would want my hand set all the way back here, creating a very high point where my hand is very far away from the center of gravity. Now that would be like the perfect, what is it, the Beauty and the Beast teapot, you know, like, like if you put the handle back here, it's just got that kind of really typical teapot look, and putting it over the top really changes that a little bit. But there are ways, like if I put the handle up higher, so it lifted towards this side, it would move my hand closer to the center of gravity, which would make it not feel quite as heavy when it was full of water. Mountain Mama says, never thought about handle placement. I always have to think about the form and function of a piece, and so that's a lot of how I design my work. I don't just kind of throw pieces together thinking that they're going to be perfect. You always have to kind of imagine what it's going to be like and how it's going to function. And then Elizabeth says, the one you just made looks taller, so it looks like it would be better to have a back handle versus a top one. Right, and so that's another thing, right? So aesthetically, I've got the flow of the piece comes up and over, and the spout balances this side. So if I had a handle coming off here, it would look very balanced and symmetrical. That's why you're the potter, Mountain Mama says. Yeah. Right. So I think this piece would look good with the handle off the backside. So we'll go ahead and try it. Because this piece has a more compact, it's not quite as wide as the last piece, then that also gives me a little bit more reason to put a handle here, because if I was holding it here and my hand sat in this area, then my hand would be fairly close to the center of gravity, which is, you know, right here. So my hand would be supporting it here, which isn't very far away, and that makes it not very heavy or unwieldy. Tea is good. Hi Dasa23. Yep. So I'm actually getting ready to pull the handle right now. So I'm going to get some fresh clay out of the bag. I'm just taking a sip of tea real quick. And I'm going to roll out the piece for the handle. I'm also glad you're enjoying the stream. Thank you for joining me. Mountain Mama, you can always watch the, we call them VODs or VOD, video on demand. So if you just come back to my channel when I'm offline, you can look at my videos and you can find all of the previous streams, and you can just watch and start wherever you left off. Have a good evening. Thanks for joining me. So this is a piece of the same clay body, and I'm gonna start compressing it into what we call a coil. It's potter's terms for a snake that you would make in Play-Doh. Oh, thank you so much, Dasa. Yeah, hopefully I can apply for affiliate after my stream this evening. I needed one more stream. So I'm looking forward to it. You've never tried pots yourself? Yeah, so, oh, thank you so much for the follow, Tapmolia. Bye, Mountain Mama. Thanks so much for joining me. So we take this this coil of clay, which, you know, 5-year-olds call a snake, and you figure it's quite hard to get a fitting lid. It can be. There are many steps along the way, Dasa, and one of the ways to get a fitting lid, we have a tool called calipers, and these are used for measuring. And so what I can do is I can use this. I'm going to move this a little bit in frame, and I can measure the size of the opening. That way, when I'm throwing the piece, this is made separately, this lid, and when I'm making this lid, I can then take and measure to make sure that it fits inside that space. Now there's also, oh, thank you so much, Carrion Pottery, appreciate it. And the using the, oh, thank you so much. Using the calipers and a technique called trimming, where we actually take, and a lot of the times, like with a lid like this, what I actually did was use the teapot itself, and I set the lid on it like so while it was centered on the wheel, and then this is a trimming tool. This is called a ribbon tool, and you just trim this piece until it fits exactly inside, and that's how you get your fitting lids. So I actually have 2 of those to do in a little while after I get this handle done. I have a couple lids that I need to fit into some other forms. So for the handle, I've made this lug of clay. I like to keep it, I have a very specific way that I make my handles, but I try to have a taper in this coil so it tears down to one side, and then I flatten it so that it has 2 flat sides and then 1 thinner side, and that's going to be the base for the handle that I'm going to pull. And then I'm going to support the handle like so. I'm just going to hold it up in the air and then pull, use some water, and I drag across the surface of the clay to extend the length of this handle and also refine the shape, so I can drag my thumb across the surface to create a flatter indentation here in the center. And you can shape however you want. You can add extra flat areas or any lines. Dasa says, good to know. Maybe I'll try it next. I'm recently succeeded in throwing some sake bottles thanks to Blue Potter's demos here on Twitch. But on to handle pulling, yeah. Yeah, try it next time. Sake bottles are a lot of fun to make too. So yeah, so here I've got some shape put into this handle. So this will be the top side. This will be how I like to hold it, with the little thumb groove. So it gives me a little bit of support and my hand kind of fits right here. I also like these flat handles. I don't ever want my handle to be round, or else they kind of roll in your hand, so the piece feels like it's swinging back and forth. So I always make my handles nice and flat, so they look more like a rectangle in shape. 2 flat sides, 2 thin sides. And from here, I'm gonna cut. I'm actually gonna just hold the handle in my hand exactly the way that I would hold it. And then here where I've pulled the piece thin, where it actually has that texture where I pulled it, I'm gonna cut right through that. And get this is the handle that I'm gonna use. From here, I'm gonna go ahead and find my attachment point. So that point wants to be exactly in line with the spout. So I'm trying to envision this line moving across the spout, across the handle, and then to the back of the pot here. You can give yourself a little bit of space. It doesn't have to be perfect until you set the handle in place. So I'm just working a little water into this space. I'm gonna actually remove the lid because I'll have to pick the teapot up and I don't want the lid to fall. I'm just gonna move that off to the side. Alright, and then I do the same thing. I just wet and add a little bit of moisture to the handle here. Build up a little slip just on the surface, and now I'm going to make the attachment. So again, lining up everything from the spout to the handle, and then I give a little back pressure on the inside. So I'm supporting this piece right in here, right behind the handle, supporting, and then I'm kind of wiggling the handle back and forth until I feel like it gets kind of stuck, and then I compress. I squeeze with my thumb and my index finger is really pressing that clay into place, and then I press on both sides to make sure that it's sealed all the way around. Now that the piece is just sealed with pressure, I'm going to go ahead and take my wooden dowel rod and I'm just going to kind of roll over the edges where the piece is joined and just really make sure that clay is worked into place so there's no cracks. I don't want to see any space between the handle and the pot that I'm joining to. This appendage should be 100% sealed on. And then before I do anything else with shaping this handle, I really want to make sure that it's nice and clean. This is the only time it's really easy to get underneath in this space right here. So this is exactly when you want to clean it up. It only gets harder once you pull the handle and you shape it into that ear shape. So I just want to clean up that connection and make it look nice and uniform. There we go. Dry my hand a little bit. Now I'm going to lift the pot. I'm just going to let this handle hang so you can see the handle's coming straight down from the spout here. And now I want to kind of get the teapot at the angle that I want the handle to be coming out at. So I'm trying to match this same angle that the spout has here, just to give it some aesthetic kind of flow. So you see that it almost has the same exact space here and here now. And then I'm just gonna thin this out a little bit more. This is the last time that I'm gonna pour fresh water over this handle with my hands. Again, you can clean up around it all that you need to. And now I'm going to support that handle underneath with my hand, and I'm going to let the teapot roll over and let gravity support the weight there. And before I ever make an attachment on this backside, I really want to shape this handle. So I'm going to give it a little bit more. If I want it to have more lift, I can let the handle pull up more. If I want to shape this, I can rub my hand underneath like so. Really get that shape that I want in there. I also want to make sure that the tail of the handle lines up. Always check the movement between the spout and the handle here. So now I'm just going to seal the tail of the handle against the teapot. Again, all this extra clay is just allowing me to adjust the height and lift that's in this handle. So I never want to take it off until I'm ready to. So once I'm ready to, then I can seal this bottom of the handle to the pot and then pull off all the excess clay that doesn't need to be there. So now all this just goes away and that handle is sealed on to the teapot like that. And it's just finishing up this little tail. And this can be done with any style you want. There's lots of ways to make the connection look. I'm just going to do this little kind of spade connection. So it has that kind of look to it. The connection there at the base. At any point in time, while this handle has still got moisture in it, I can lift and shape. If I want it to droop a little bit more, I can let it hang upside down to get a little bit more lift in it. I can also take a sponge that doesn't have a lot of moisture in it, and I could wedge this in this space to give it a little lift while it's drying. But I like the look of it hanging, so I'm going to find a spot to put this down for a little while. Typically when you have pieces coming over the lip, you have to put it on the edge of a table or the corner of a stool. So I have a little bench here that I'm just going to drape it on for a little while. Dasa says, with experienced potters it looks so easy, but this is hard to master. That is very true. I've added thousands and thousands of handles to pots, so it tends to look easy when you know what you're doing, but it definitely takes a lot of time to master, for sure. Alright, so I've got one more teapot to put a spout on, and also find a placement for a handle, and then we can do some lid trimming. So let's grab the other piece. So here's the other vessel, and then here's the other spout here. So Dasa asks, where did I learn my craft? I am primarily self-taught, but I worked at a university. I worked at Salisbury University, which is a college which is local here in Maryland, where I'm from. And I was hired as the head 3D technician for the 3D department at Salisbury University. And while I worked there, I spent a lot of time teaching myself to throw on the wheel. And so my wife, who at the time was taking ceramics classes at the college, she was taking pottery, and she became the ceramics technician, and I was working with ceramics and sculpture and the glass department. And the time I spent there, I did a lot of experimenting and practicing, and although I did have some mentors that I could kind of bounce ideas off of or ask them questions about the things that I was looking into, I didn't really have any formal training. It was just all through practice. So I've been making pottery for about 15 years now, and so that's how I got into it and how I've been working on it. Carrion says, think of it as knitting, aiming at a sweater, begin with a scarf. Nice. Alright, so what I'm trying to do right now is just shape up this spout a little bit before I start to apply it. So I've already cut this piece so that it fits where I want it to, and the goal with it is that I have, again, a straight line between the spout, the top of the teapot, and the spout. The bottom of the spout needs to line up so that no water pours out of it, and so no water pours out of it while it's full of water, and also so that it's at the closest point, so that as soon as it starts to tip, that it starts to pour at the same time. So I'm just lining this up a little bit, and then I'm going to draw the connection point. So I'm just going to trace a little circle around the outermost parts of this spout. The teapot is the scarf. Yes, yes. Oh, thanks, Dasa. Yeah, I am mostly self-taught. It's just been through exploring other artists. I spent a lot of time reading books and watching other people make work. I've taken a lot of workshops over the years. So as time went on, I started, when I would see that there's a potter that I really like their work, I would go see if they had any workshops coming up in areas near me. And I've always been very active in seeking out knowledge, and I have I can't even tell you, maybe 100 plus books of different pottery techniques and different things. So yeah, there's always something new to learn, and really I think kind of the part I really love about it is that I don't know everything, and that there's still more to learn, and even practicing different techniques, and it gives you a lot more to imagine and try different things and move forward with your skills and your skill set. So here I've made, it's kind of a circle inside a circle. So the circle that's on the outside was the area of space that this spout is going to connect to, and then I'm trying to cut the hollow space in between where the water will flow through the vessel into the spout. So I'm just removing that space right now. Like so. So now you can see the opening plus the space around it where the spout's going to connect. I'm going to start just by cleaning up the edges where I cut through on the inside and the outside. Make sure it's nice and clean. I don't want any sharp edges on the inside of the teapot. Now I'm going to score this a little bit. So this is just making little cut marks into the surface that I'm going to put slip in to help create some fresh clay for the attachment area. Soften it up a little bit so that we can get a good join between these two leather hard pieces of clay. I'm going to start with just a little bit of water. On the surface of this, where I've made those score marks on the spout and the teapot. And then I'm going to follow that up with a bit of slip, which is just the same clay body mixed with a bit more water, so it's kind of pasty or glue-like. It's not really sticky like glue, but it's the thickness of like an Elmer's glue. So I'm just going to get a nice layer of slip all the way around. And then I'm going to apply the spout. I want to give it a little back pressure anywhere that I'm pushing against the outside so that it doesn't cave in at all, and so that I can get a good compression between the spout and the clay body so that it sticks together real well. So I'm just slowly moving around all the sides, pressing from the inside and the outside. As I get this connection made. Oh, good night, Maki. Thanks for hanging out. Really appreciate it. Until next time, have a great night. Now I'm gonna really join these pieces together. Just rolling a bit of that clay over. Creating a bit more compression between these connection points. So once I've gotten that really joined together well, I can go around and clean it up. So I'm going to do that, just a bit of water. And the sponge, just dragging across the surface of the clay just to smooth it out. There we go. I like to go back in and add a little fresh clay around that connection point. So now that I've rehydrated the surface a little bit, I can put some fresh clay in there without worrying about it separating. So I'm just going to roll out a really thin coil. wrap this around the spout. I'm going to start by flattening it to begin with. Really get it to form fit around the spout and the body of the pot. And then I'm going to start to blend them together so that it looks seamless. So I'm just taking the dowel rod, pressing it right in between. You can do this with a pencil too, it doesn't have to be specifically a dowel rod, but if you do get a nice dowel rod that has a taper on it like this, it works really well. Just rolling the clay back and forth. Blending it together. Just going to start smoothing it, and again hit it with the sponge. And try to make this connection seamless. Shape that spout so I've got a nice pouring lip. And then I need to check the connection points on the inside, so I'm just going to take the dowel rod inside and just try to smooth out around those connection points on the inside. You can also get inside there, just make sure there's no extra slip that's been pushed out into the pathway of the spout. You want everything to flow nice and smoothly through there. Alright, just going to hit it with a sponge. Alright, so there's that spout. Thanks, Dasa. So the only thing left for this one is the handle for now. But I'm going to let the spout set up for a minute. I don't want to accidentally knock it or shift it in any way, so I'm just going to let this set up a bit over off to the side, and I'll do some trimming of a lid here for another piece. So this is a fun shape. Threw this on the wheel, and I made all the parts for it so it can also be a teapot. I'm just gonna put this here in this place to get this centered. Dasa says, this is kind of a big question, but maybe you have some good suggestions. If I were to open my own workshop, would you have any tips? Yeah, of course. So, first thing I want to do is get this centered back up. As far as opening your own shop, make sure that you have a plan. Obviously, the easiest thing to do is start working and then build up a quote-unquote line of work or something that you can call your own, like a product line. And if you have a good product line that you can start to sell to people either wholesale or just straight to the market, or if you just want to have a random collection of work, you kind of need to know where you're going to go with that. So as long as you have a good idea of what it is that you want your shop to do, you know, if it's just a space that you're opening to work in and you just want a workspace, then that's your goal and you know that. If you want to have a retail space, then you need to kind of have that in mind as well. The thing about any art form is that you need to have multiple outlets and sources of revenue. So you may need to set up a place that you can teach if necessary, or rent wheel time or kiln space. You need to kind of come up with a lot of outlets. Sometimes it's good to have other artist friends, and if you want to set up a space where you are retailing, then you can do consignment for other people as well and not just your own work. That way you get give them like take a 30 or 40% commission if you sell a piece, so that you're getting some income off of having the store open. Really, the best way to start is to just get a wheel, have a way to fire. If you're just going to hand build, then don't worry about the wheel. But you need to just make pottery and then figure out how to sell it, and then figure out what is selling. And the thing I did was kind of set up my space, and I was able to work for a long time out of, this is my home studio, and I've been making pots here for years, and this is how I make and most of my work, and I sell it through shows and galleries. There are online stores, wholesale retailers, lots of other ways that you can sell your work and make a profit on it. But really, I think the most important thing is getting to the point where you're making work that you're proud of, that you can be passionate about. Because once you're passionate and excited about the work you're making, you're going to be able to sell it a lot easier. And it's going to be able to be one of those things where every time someone asks you a question about your work, you're able to give them a very positive, vibrant explanation for why you did something and why you're continuing to do something, what you might be working on. People want to hear your story, so it's good for you to be able to tell them what excites you about the medium, why you want to do it, why you continue to do it. And I think the best thing to do when you're starting out is really just get the basic equipment, and then if that's what your goal is, then find a way to acquire it cheaply and affordably. And some of the ways to do that are just through local people. Find a group, find other artists who live near you, and someone might have an extra wheel or an extra kiln. Eventually someone's gonna have something extra. I've gotten most of my equipment through other people getting rid of it. There's a potter who retires, every week, so you can find some equipment somewhere on the cheap. It's just be careful about certain things like kilns. Sometimes a used kiln can cost just as much as a new kiln because all the elements are really the expensive part. It's not really the body or the brick that's expensive. It's the wire that heats it up. Is there anything a little more specific that you want to know about Dasa? Because those are just kind of general statements about it. So this form, because of the alteration. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, Dasa. No problem. Because of the alteration on this form, it's not very level at the top. So I'm going to have to trim it a little bit and recenter it. So I'm going to have to start with taking this piece, I'm going to flip it over, and try to center it on the wheel as best I can. And then I want to lock it in place. I'm going to use some fresh clay around the base. To create little stops. So it doesn't move past the area where I have it currently. So Dasa asks, she says, or they say, obviously a wheel, maybe a kiln. I could fire at my workplace, but would love to be able to fire in a gas kiln. Any thoughts on that? What about the thing that cleans the water so the pipes don't get blocked from clay? Well, if you can fire at your workplace, that's great. So that gives you a very large benefit right there from getting the kiln yourself, and that way the maintenance is also kept up for you. Yeah, the wheel, if that's what your primary goal is throwing, then yes, you'll need your own wheel, and it does help. You'll have to figure out, transporting your work back and forth, but that's really not that hard. And then the thing that cleans water from pipes, there's lots of clay traps. They're called clay traps. And I'm trying to think of the brand name. You can just make them, but there is a brand name one. I think it's called the sink trap or clay sink. I can't remember exactly what it's called off the top of my head right now, but they are not that expensive, and they're not too difficult to install. And if you don't want to do so here's the easiest thing to do. is to not worry about dumping your clay water down the sink. That's the easiest thing to do. What you want to do is while you're working, you have a bucket. You have your clay water here. So as you throw, everything goes in the clay bucket. If you need to clean up more, you get a fresh bucket of water. Just have lots of buckets of water. When you get done working, take all of your scraps, anything that you can let dry out, set it in a place where it can dry out. Like a bisqueware bowl is actually one of the better things that you can put it in. All the wet clay that you catch in your throwing buckets or your cleanup buckets, you let settle. You try to keep it so it's just clay. Don't wipe up your floor and all the hair and dust and dirt and stuff. If you need to sweep your floor from the clay, just throw that clay in the trash, just all the little dust and tiny pieces, unless it's a large piece that you know it's just clay and it's not contaminated. This throwing water you let sit for a day, and the heavy material floats to the bottom and the water goes to the top. Pour off the top water into a separate bucket. That top water you can then just dump outside instead of dumping it down your drain. And there's nothing harmful in the clay. It doesn't have anything. It's all just earth material, right? So you're not poisoning or polluting anything. So just get rid of the water outside, and then the clay that's at the base, you can recycle that. So what you want to do is take it and get yourself a plaster bat. I pour pottery plaster into some, you can get them at the dollar store. They're like basins that you use for washing, and they're like $1 each, obviously. And they're about 12 inches long, 4 or 5 inches deep, filled about halfway full with plaster, let it set, and then you have these plaster blocks, and you take the water from here, you get rid of the water, and then you take the clay, you put it on the plaster block, you let it sit for an hour, flip it, let it sit for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then wedge it up, and you have reusable clay. You didn't put any clay down the sink. You recycled all the water. You recycled the water and the clay. No need for a sink trap, no need to ruin your pipes. It's the easiest way to do it. So right now I'm leveling out the base